And peace, peace, peace. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, peace. Peace. This your boy Eric the Man Sanders coming with you with another one. I'm doing Who is the Weak King Isaiah. You know, a lot of people, say King of Babylon. You know, some people say King of Assyria, some people say Nebuchadnezzar. So I'm just doing, comparative studies, putting it together so we can see which one it is. Just some good research, that I do every day, man. Every day trying to learn something new. So I got one people that says Nebuchadnezzar could be, some people saying it's Nimrod. So we go break down, we compare it to the verse of Isaiah and see who it is. So while I get it situated, just to the song I got is about a minute long. Then we'll get to the presentation.
Speaking on some things, see so much hate, so much racism, police brutality, us killing each other. With that station rape, we need to pray today to the Most High God. Hallelujah, hallelujah. World full of hate, don't let the girls rape. Police killing black men, see the yellow tape. How much can I take? When will I break? Only God knows the day of my fate. World full of hate, don't let the girls rape. Police killing black men, see the yellow tape. How much can I take? When will I break? Only God knows the day of my fate.
Welcome to hell, where they sell drugs and kill. Girls will bleed, cause they don't love their hell. Children with no father receiving miseducation, being deceived by the church that they father is Satan. Most pastors really greedy cause it's money they chasing. Really wicked is sad but wear a mask like Jason. All I see in this nation, there's racism, discrimination, that fake patriotism. A lot of anger, a lot of atheism. But prayer don't work without the faith in them. Now listen, hallelujah, hallelujah, praise y'all.
World full of hate.
Yeah, let's get to this presentation. Here we go. Who is the king of the list of in Isaiah? Presentation that is popped up. And share. I think this one. That's it. That's it right there. All right. So let's get to it. Who is the wicked king in Isaiah? Nimrod versus Nebuchadnezzar. My bad, man. Lost the M out there, Russian. But let's go to it. All right, this might be basing off of these verses. Because, off my Lucifer video, I already explained that Lucifer comes from a man named Saint Lucifer that was written in by Saint Jerome. I just broke down the esoteric meaning of it, of the morning star. I broke down that it was a wicked king and a man, and that of evil, wicked being that was trying to be in heaven and fail, like they say, So If it was not, if it wasn't this being, they talking about who was it? If it was a wicked king, who was it? If they saying of Babylon, who was it? Okay. So let me read this verse. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars, O God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. All right. This is the NIV. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You once laid low the nations. You said in your hearts, I will ascend to the heavens. I will rise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly on the utmost heights of Mount Safan. Now, in Hebrew, that means north. All right. Just remember that. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, but you are brought down to the realm of dead, to the depths of the pits. Okay. And then 16 would say, and once you fall, these people will look at you saying, this is the man that weakened the nations. So I'm basing it off of a king who had control of all the many of the nation and many of the kings, who had them trembling, okay, who was against the Most High, was trying to be equal to the Most High, who crumbled and failed to a point where everybody looked down on him and had shame of him and saying, this is the man that did all this. So I'm looking at it, comparing to these things that just say that this happened. All right. So the first person I'm gonna go to is Nimrod. Nimrod, also spelled Nimrod, legendary biblical figure of the Book of Genesis. Nimrod is described in Genesis 10:8-12 as the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. The only other references to Nimrod in the Bible are Micaiah 5:6, where Assyria is called the land of Nimrod, and in First Chronicles 1:10, which reiterates his might. In the Genesis passage, the beginning of his kingdom is said to have been Babel, Erech, and Akkad, in the land of Shinar. Nimrod is said to have then built Nineveh, Calah, modern Nimrod, and Rehoboth, and Resen. There is some consensus among biblical scholars that the mention of Nimrod in the Genesis is referring not to an individual, but to an ancient people in Mesopotamia. Now, I want y'all to understand that, because again, this goes back to things like mythology. A lot of these ancient kings had stories based on them, even stories based on them, supernatural stories based on them. From Egypt to Mesopotamia to places like Canaan. So a lot of these mythical characters are based off of the king. They're not actual history bases off these people, but they're mythological bases off stories off them. Okay. So when they say Nimrod might not have been a person, it could have been a people. It could have been a king, a certain king. Okay. So just keep that in mind. There is some senses among biblical scholars that mention the Nimrod Genesis is a reference not to an individual, but to an ancient people in Mesopotamia. The description of Nimrod as a mighty hunter before the Lord is a intrusion in the context but it's probably like the historical notices derived from some old Babylonian saga. However, no equivalent of the name has yet been found in the Babylonian or other cuneiform records. In character, there is a certain resemblance between Nimrod and the Mesopotamian epic of Hero of Gilgamesh. Now, there's some verses about Nimrod. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is what it said. Like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh, and the Sanaa. From the land, he went to Assyria, where he built Naive, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen, which is between Naviah and Calah, which is the great city. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, "Is this the man?" Oh, my bad, I put that verse right there. But that's the verse for Isaiah. But I'm gonna read the 16 again of Isaiah that people don't read. They'll see that shall narrowly look upon the end and consider thee, saying, "This is the man that made the earth to tremble and that shake the kingdoms." All right. So we already got Nimrod being a mighty man, a king. Some saying he was a mythical character based off of somebody else. So let's go and see if he applied to the other things that said in Isaiah. Nimrod, as a descendant of Ham, moved into Arabia and Africa, Cush, and his clan chose to settle in the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. This was the land between two rivers, also known as Mesopotamia. Okay. No ancient Mesopotamian king bore the name Nimrod, and the description of one man building all these cities telescopes history. These cities were established at different periods, and some never existed at the same time. Putting aside these historical problems, it seems clear that the description of Nimrod's achievements here are also complementary. He is being credited with building the first major cities after the flood, whose fame could not fail to impress the readers. So again, when you really study history, and that's why we are trying to tell people, you had to put science, you had to put history, you had to put everything when it comes into these scriptures, okay? Because this thing is deeper than what people think it is. You have to know mythology. Okay, you had to know symbolism. You had to know what's literal. You had to know what's history amongst all of these, because you're going to find yourself in so much confusion and so much hate when somebody said that this didn't really happen. You say, "Oh, what you trying to say is everything." You see what I'm saying? So you got to understand these things. You understand how history goes. You understand that one man ain't gonna build all these cities like that. All these cities are at different times, at different places. When you go into the history, you could tell that different people made these different things. And this is in any other nation or any place that you ever study. Do not put all time in one box. You have to go through time. America was not built in a day. Rome was not built in a day. Egypt was not built in a day. Canaan was not built in a day. All these cities were not built in one day. Okay. Cush taught Nimrod to hate Yah. Cush had taught his son that God was against their side of the family, and it was up to him to save his lineage from the enslavement of humiliation. It was by his powerless as a hunter that fame and honor were obtained. Ultimately, he rose to a position of prominence as the world leader of the time, using his charisma, ability, and energy to establish an empire center in Babylon. There's another argument people saying, well, Babel and Babylon. We're going to see. This will become the capital of Babylon Empire and prevalent throughout the Old Testament. God had given Noah and his sons the order to establish human government, but the kind he attended was far cry from what Ham's descendants would build and establish. The Babylonian mentioned throughout the entire Bible, from the passage of Genesis to the captivity and the destruction of Israel in 586 BC to the Babylon of Revelation, and the Babel built and established by Nimrod in Genesis 10. This was truly a government set up against God and everything God represented. Okay, so he established these great nations. He invaded. He had many nations captive, He was against the Most High. So, he got some stuff weighing on him that proves that he's the one in Isaiah. It's something we'll get to the end, but I'm gonna show some things that doesn't, some things that will. You're gonna be the one, the listener. Tell me which one you believe, okay? And then I got some more. Some say Assyria, the kings of Assyria mixed together. So I'm gonna do Assyria. I might try to find one and mix them two together. But all right, Genesis 11. 1-4, because the Tower of Babel be the temple of Marduk. And the whole world had one language and common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar. This is Babylonia, and is settled there. They said to each other, Come, let make bricks and break them thoroughly. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that they may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the earth. The myth may have been inspired by Babylonian Tower Temple north of Marduk Temple, which is Babylonian Hebrew for Babel. The similarity in pronunciation of Babel and Balal to confuse. Okay. So I'm going to speak more when that building is across from the Temple of Marduk. So, because there's two sources, even in the Nebuchadnezzar presentation I'm doing, they speak of this same building, which people know is called the ziggurat. Okay. Or was a ziggurat. All right, Babylonian Talmud. And I just went through everywhere, scammer through everything, seeing where some people got certain things from, why people say this. How did they know that Nimrod got killed, where he died from? So I just went into everything that people may not go into. I'm a researcher, and that's what I do. All right. Some rabbis further identify Nimrod with Amraphel, king of Shinar, one of the 4 kings who took Lot prisoner and against whom Abraham went to war. As Nimrod is already identified as king of Shinar, the rabbis concluded that this was an alternative name or a throne name. So they're saying Nimrod could be based off this king in Shinar because they haven't found proof that Nimrod being a real person. That Nimrod could be a name, like a kingship name, a royal name. Okay, based off a certain king, or it could be based off many of the kings intertwined. We don't know. All right. And it was in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Rav and Sammy. One of them said his name was Nimrod. And why did they call him Amraphel? Because he spoke Amar and dropped Hippie, our father Abraham, into the fiery furnace. The other said his name was Amraphel. And why did they call him Nimrod? Because he caused the whole world to rebel. Nimrod and his kingship against him, God. Okay. And this is how research works. You go to both sides. You don't just be biased and start an agenda and say, I believe this, I think this happened this way, so I'm going to teach it this way. I'm going to ignore the other historical events or artifacts or archaeology or literature that says the other way. You go to both sides, okay? Agree or not, if you don't want to accept it or not, but still go through it because the listener, the student, the person you're trying to teach has the right to. Is Nimrod based off of Amraphel, who is based off of Hammurabi? Okay. Biblical data, a king of Shinar, who invaded the West in conjunction with Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and others, and destroyed Sodom. The identity of this name has long been a subject to controversy among Assyrianologists and is not even yet established to the satisfaction of all scholars. Schrader was the first to suggest cuneiform inscriptions and the Old Testament that Amraphel was Hammurabi, king of the Babylon, the sixth king in the first dynasty of Babylon. This is now the prevailing view among both Assyrianologists and Old Testament scholars. The different of explanation, though a partial clue is perhaps furnished by the explanation of the name in a cuneiform later as equivalent to Kimta Rapastu, great people and family. On this basis, Kamata, and Raphael. Okay, so now what they're saying is Nimrod could be based off Raphael. Nimrod could be a kingship name based off Raphael. And Raphael could actually be Hammurabi. Okay, so hey, like I said, ancient times did this. If you even go and study Egypt, they did this a lot. Okay, they made themselves gods. They made themselves kings. They initiated themselves in deities. They made whole stories around them. They actually didn't have nothing to do with a war. They actually put their name into a war that they didn't have nothing to do with. You know, they did a lot of these things because they was kings. They was royalty. A lot of them big ego. Some wanted to be established as gods. Some want their names last forever. That's why they build certain buildings. You have to understand this. Put it in reality. Hammurabi was the founder of the centralized kingdom of Babylonia, with the capital of the city of Babylon. The length of his reign is given in the native list of kings as 55 years, but this long period is not perfectly certain, as a recently discovered chronicle throws doubt upon some figures in the king list from which the number 55 is obtained, and puts the length of his reign at 43 years. Hammurabi himself was honored and imitated even to the copying of his inscriptions by kings of the latest period, such as Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar. Outlines a history of early Babylon, a conqueror so great as he may well have penetrated and conquered as far west as Syria and Palestine. So he was so great that people copied him. Did you not understand that? Okay. Death of Nimrod, Book of Jasher, chapter 27. All right. And Esau, at the time after the death of Abraham, frequently went to the field to hunt. And Nimrod, king of Babel, the same was Amraphel. Now, this book right here is telling you that Nimrod and Amraphel ain't the same people. All right. And Nimrod, king of Babel, the same was Amraphel, also frequently went his mighty men to hunt in the field and walk about with his men in the cool of the day. And Nimrod was observing Esau at the days, for jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all days. And on a certain day, Esau went into the field to hunt and found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his two men. And all his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they were moved at a distance from him. And they went from the different directions to hunt, and Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. And Nimrod, his men that were with him, not knew him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walk about the field at the cool of the day, and to know where his men were hunting in the field. And Nimrod and two of his men that were with him came to the place where they were, and Esau started suddenly from his lurking place and drew his sword and hastened and ran at Nimrod and cut his head. And Esau fought a desperate fight with the two men that they were with Nimrod. And when they called out him, Esau turned to them and smote them to death with his sword. And all the mighty men of Nimrod who had left him to go to the wilderness heard the cry at a distance, and they knew the voices of those men, and they ran to know the cause of it. When they found their king and the two men that were with them lying dead in the wilderness. Now, this book right here is telling you, it's saying that Nimrod got his head chopped off by Esau, okay? Hey, this is what the Book of Jasher say. You don't agree, you don't agree. If you like the book, if you agree with the book, and if you think the book is worth reading, that's on you. And Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him, and Nimrod and his men frequently walked about. Let me see. All right. And Esau and all the mighty men of Nimrod who had left him to go to the wilderness heard the cry. Okay, and Esau, the mighty men, coming in the distance. Okay, and Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming. Oh, hold on, wait a minute. And Esau took those garments and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men. And he came into his father's house and wearied and exhausted from fight. And he was ready to die through grief, and he approached his brother Jacob and sat before him. And he said unto his brother Jacob, Behold, I shall die this day, and where then I want the birthright? And Jacob acted wisely with Esau in his matter, and Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, for it was so bright, it was so brought about the Lord. So wait a minute. So this is what it said, that Esau killed Nimrod, became depressed, thinking he was going to die, and then sold his birthright to Jacob. Hey, that's a new one I heard right there. All right. Conclusion, Book of Jasher, chapter 27, Death of Nimrod. And Esau portion of the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth, for the possession of burial ground, Esau also sold to Jacob, but Jacob brought all this from his brother Esau for value given. And Jacob wrote the whole of this in a book, and he testified the same with witness, and he sealed it, and the book remained in the hands of Jacob. And when Nimrod, the son of Cush, died, his men lifted him up and brought him in a concert nation and buried him in the city. And all the days of Nimrod lived were 215 years. 15 years he died. And the days that Nimrod reigned upon the people of the land were 185 years. And Nimrod died by the sword of Esau in the shame and contempt. And the seed of Abraham caused his death, as he seen in his dreams. And at the death of Nimrod, his kingdom became divided into many divisions. And all those parts that Nimrod reigned over were restored to the respective kings of the land, who recovered them after the death of Nimrod. And all the people of the house of Nimrod were for a long time enslaved to all the other kings of the land. Okay. That's my take on Nimrod, the wicked king, being the wicked king in Isaiah 14. Similarities: he ruled many nations. He was against Yah. He fell from his throne with his head, got his head chopped off. He enslaved many kings, right? So there's a lot that he did that would say he could have been, right? Now, the negative part is no claim of him being in Mesopotamia, claims that he was a mythical character based on other kings, claims that he was based off of people, and no evidence of him setting a throne on the north part of Israel, Canaan, so claim a place where Moses rested in the Exodus near Egypt, Mount Saphon. And that's why I did the NIV, because the Mount Saphon said the Mount of the North, so which is Canaan, Israel. Okay, some people said that it's when Israel was coming out of Exodus, and that's part of the place they settled before going into the land. Okay, so I mean, he got three he got three main things, but the thing is, was he a great character? Now, if you want to go to the character he was based off, the Amraphel, and then based off of Hammurabi, then we got to go deeper than that. So now I might do Hammurabi. See, does he fit? And when I do the Assyrians next time, so Hammurabi versus Assyrians, see would that match up? Okay. Now let's go to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar ruled the Neo-Babylonian Empire from 629 to 539 BC, following in the footsteps of his father, Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was military leader who became the king of Babylon after fighting off the Assyrians in 626 BC. He was able to form an alliance with the Medes by marrying his son Nebuchadnezzar to Amystis, the Median king's daughter. This alliance is what ultimately caused the official fall of the Assyrian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar built on his father's military success, amazing any remaining Assyrian territories and easily extinguishing and resistance, thus expanding the Babylonian Empire. He is best known from the biblical books of Daniel and Jeremiah, where he is portrayed as the king who stands against God. So that's one thing both of them got. It was claimed to be against God, okay? Claimed to be a Satan, okay? An adversary. Nebuchadnezzar conquered Assyria, Egypt, and Judah, but his most famous conquest is that of Jerusalem, which is recorded in the Bible. Some refer to him as a ruthless, cruel king who destroyed Jerusalem and forced the Jewish people into exile. It is reported that Nebuchadnezzar's destruction of the cities was a fierce, and the fires were so hot that they turned the limestone buildings into lime. Nebuchadnezzar's conquest made him one of the history's greatest kings, having turned his empire into a powerful force. He became a leader not to only his own people, but also to other nations as well. Cities like Judah chose to be tributary states. This means that their kings were subordinate, and Nebuchadnezzar reporting to him and governing for him. Now, it matches the two things I already mentioned, that he's has Satan against the Most High, an adversary against the Most High, and he already had kings who actually are under him, okay, in the nations. Nebuchadnezzar wanted people to worship gold and false gods, okay. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 90 feet high, 90 feet wide, and set up upon the plain of Dora in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he has set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "This is what you commanded to do, O people, nations, and men of every language. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of the gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into the blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshiped the image of the gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced, and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You have issued a decree, a king, that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown in a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Sadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, O king. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. So this is Nebuchadnezzar not telling people to worship him, worship the false gods, and worship gold. So that goes against him being, to me, being the one that's spoke of in Isaiah. All right. Could the ziggurat be the inspiration of the Tower of Babel? An important part of his restoration project was rebuilding the great ziggurat, known as Etamanaki, the foundation of heaven and earth, which had been destroyed by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, along with the rest of Babylonian rebuilding began under Sennacherib's son Esarhaddon. Under Nabopolassar was completed by Nebuchadnezzar. The Entamanaki with the great rising tower is thought to be the inspiration of the biblical Tower of Babel. Okay, because the Tower of Babel could be what? A mythical story based off of something real. I'm going to keep pushing mythology because you got to understand mythology when you're studying history, when you're studying these things, even when you break it down to the science. Because when something doesn't make sense or doesn't fit, you have to understand that maybe it could be mythology. Okay, or symbolism. Book of Daniel says Yah made Nebuchadnezzar insane. The most famous sufferer of this condition was King Nebuchadnezzar, who in the book of Daniel was driven from a man and did eat grass as oxen. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire from 605 BC and 562 BC. According to the Bible, he conquered Judah and Jerusalem and sent the Jews into exile. He was also credited with building the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was humbled by God for boasting about his achievement, lost his sanity, and lived like an animal for 7 years. According to Daniel chapter 4, when his sanity was later restored, he praised and honored God. Okay. Now listen to this. Although the book of Daniel is a fascinating narrative, there is no outside corporation for the story of the king's madness nor any particular stubborn streak. It is not surprising that a people who felt they had been victimized by this king should depict him negatively in their narratives, but this does not mean those negatives are historical accurate. Nebuchadnezzar in other sources is depicted as a great king who not only restored Babylon to its former glory, but transformed it into a city of light. Under his reign, Babylon became a city which was not only wondrous to the behold, but also a center for the arts and its intellectual pursuits. Women enjoy equal rights under Nebuchadnezzar rule, though not completely equal in status by any modern day standard. Schools and temples were plentiful, and literacy, mathematics, and science and craftsmanship flourished, along with the tolerance of the interested in other gods or other faiths and the belief of other cultures. So what this is saying, this again goes against Isaiah, because Isaiah supposed to, and the king Isaiah supposed to tremble all the kings, wouldn't let people free, enslaved everybody. But this is saying the only really people that were saying that he was a wicked king had to be the Israelites because of the way he was treated them. But to the Babylonians, to certain places, he was a hero because he established buildings, he established power somewhere. You know what I'm saying? So when somebody is wicked to one people, they might not be wicked to others. And that's how history goes. That's how nationality goes. That's how when you've been invaded by people, just like just go to slave trade. It's people that would say, yeah, you know, we was enslaved and these people wicked. Then there might be them nations that helping like the native nations, the African nations, the Europe nations, the Arabic nations that had a part of all these slaves and slave trades. They're not going to look the same. That benefited off it. Some ancestors might say, "Oh man, we're sorry for what our ancestors did," but the nations, most of the nations that benefited off the other side of it, not being slaves, but benefiting off and living good and having their nations flourish, is not going to look the same as the people who was impressed by that nation. Okay, like it or not. The death of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar envisioned a city which people ever after would view and wonder, and then made the vision a reality. He died peacefully of natural causes in the city and had built after a reign of 43 years, but Babylon would not last even another 25 after his death. All right. My take on him being the wicked king, the similarity considered a wicked king. He was considered a wicked king. He ruled kingdoms and did conquer Israel. Okay. He didn't fall and he didn't establish himself equal to the Most High. All right. So in this round, who I would pick Nimrod, which some would say of Amraphel and goes all the way to Hammurabi, right? For right now, because he has more similarities as being a wicked king, still in enslaving all the nations or the nations. I guess you would say about Babel trying to be equal to the Most High, like creating something like Babel, even though we know it's a ziggurat. But again, we can't just base Isaiah off it like it's a real historical event, right? So it might be mythological. So then we got to understand what is the mythological. So that would mean Nebuchadnezzar could be. Well, I'm just going by the verses that they explain and say what king, because they say it's a wicked king. So is it a mythical story of a wicked king or is it a historical story of a wicked king? That's something we had to, that it's going to be hard to understand until they start finding more things to show that this is that. But as far as we basing it off of Isaiah, I would say it would lean more towards Nimrod or one of the kings of Babylon. Okay. So my next one, like I said, I'm going to try to do Hammurabi because that's supposed to be who Nimrod really supposed to be based off of, and do the Assyrian kings because I've seen some stuff about Assyria too that fits it real perfect. All right, so I hope y'all enjoyed. Peace out.